ايه ايه لا مو بس انا بطلت عندنا مع خدمات. تفضل سعادتك. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, our guests who are present here today, and our guests who are attending from the Zoom link. Welcome to the International Humanitarian City session. This year marks 20 years of service for the International Humanitarian City in Dubai and in the humanitarian field. The IHC, founded by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, in 2003. It has grown to become the largest humanitarian hub in the world, a hub that hosts the largest humanitarian community in the Gulf region and cooperates with over 80 different organizations, employing more than 500 individuals from over 70 nationalities in one place. Today, we're going to shed light on the history and development of the Dubai International Humanitarian City, including its key milestones and achievements, becoming an important humanitarian logistics platform in the region that supports and extends a helping hand to the nations around the world. I'm now honored to invite His Excellency Ambassador Ahmed Abdurrahman Al-German, Permanent Representative of the United Arab Emirates to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva, to do the opening remarks. Please welcome him.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm very pleased to take this part in this special event to mark the International Humanitarian City 20 years of activities in the humanitarian field. The IHC is one of the important icons of humanitarian work that marks the involvement of United Arab Emirates in this field, which is considered a fundamental pillar of the charitable approach adopted by state since its establishment. The fundamental purpose of UAE aid is to reduce poverty, support those in need, help build state capacity, invest in human capital growth, address climate change and other critical problems. My country continues to rank among the largest providers of official development assistance, ODA, relative to national income worldwide. From start of 2021 to 2022, the UAE has provided of over $3.5 billion aid to countries around the globe, in close coordination with concerned national governments as well as regional and international organizations, include UNICEF, UNDP, WHO, and the Office of UN High Commissioner of Refugees. Now back to IHC, the largest humanitarian hub in the world and home of more than 80 important organizations and companies active in humanitarian emergency response and development sector. We are proud to establish the first independent humanitarian non-profit zone authority in our country. In our country, which allows its partner to reach over a third of the most vulnerable population in 4 hours. Moreover, the IHC Dubai played a vital role to challenge COVID-19 pandemic. It worked hardly together with its concerned partners to provide immediate support and emergency relief to communities affected by the crisis all over the world. Medical relief supplies and dispatched to all 6 geographical regions, supporting a total of 129 countries. I would like to conclude by confirming the willingness of UAE to reinforce the IHC to be leading global humanitarian hub. It considers that IHC is appropriate venue to lead international and intergovernmental network of humanitarian cities and support the efforts of all humanitarian emergency response and innovation. Last but not least, I seize this opportunity to mention that COP28, which will be held in Dubai in UAE in November, will offer a suitable platform to discuss and address the impact of climate change on the humanitarian issue, including the tools and infrastructure that should support the stakeholders. I would thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the kind words. Before we start the session, let's watch a short video introducing the International Humanitarian City to the audience.
The world we live in is complex and diverse, with many people facing unimaginable challenges every day. IHC has seen it all, has been there, and has proactively responded to save lives everywhere over the last 20 years.
In 2003, the war in Iraq started. There were a lot of need for products, services from the region. Humanitarian agency, they have a lot of demand. Also, the country was supporting Iraq and other countries with humanitarian aid. So we felt that there was a need to create such an entity.
We started our operation in 2004. We chose Dubai because of the strategic position and to support our operations in the regions nearby.
The challenges we had at that time is the not enough space and also the demand we had from all different institutes in the country and worldwide to be part of the IHC.
Tripling the size of the city, bringing all the members on board here to move with us, but also at the same time, we had to ensure readiness.
And readiness was there to respond to members' demands.
We have like a good base here. We have well positioned in Dubai, and we can really then respond to any emergencies or any needs around the world from here.
Back in 2006, it was around 30 to 35 members, while today IHC is having 85 plus members, which consist of UN agencies, NGO members, and also commercial suppliers.
If I look at the operations done by IHC between 2017 up to 2022, you can see at least 70% growth in terms of operation.
And there was a record operation that peaked our activities in 2022.
We immediately responded to the floods in Pakistan by activating an air bridge of 36 flights within a week. And this was one of our biggest operations we have done in IHC.
The future at International Humanitarian City is very promising. We are planning to increase our stockpile more.
The challenges are still there. the crises are ongoing, are increasing with climate change, with everything that's happening around the world.
The International Humanitarian City is a shining example of what can be achieved when people come together with innovative approaches. And at the heart of its mission is a commitment to sustainable humanitarian action.
IHC is the heart of Dubai that gives.
With the support of the UAE and Dubai's leadership, Dubai International Humanitarian City is ready to face the challenges of the future and embrace learning from COP28. The world we live in is complex and diverse.
Let me now invite our moderator of the day, His Excellency Ambassador Gerard Pittman-Kramer, Permanent Observer of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva, and the CEO of Jihad Sustainable Humanitarian Foundation. Please welcome him.
It's working. Good morning again. Fascinating opportunity to review a fascinating organization and hub in Dubai, which is now celebrating its 20th anniversary. As you heard from the introduction of Ms. Hanan, I'm in Geneva not only the permanent observer of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, but today, and even more so, the CEO of Jihad Sustainable Humanitarian Foundation. And Jihad is nearly reaching 20 years, that is in next March. So we have grown up together, and we have been linked very tightly over these last 20 years. And I think it's not totally inappropriate that Giuseppe has asked me to moderate this session, because I know the International Humanitarian City over the years reasonably well. I know also most of the panel, and some since a very long time. I mentioned Giuseppe. I think we've collaborated in our youth together, at least in my youth, in DHA OCHA days, in Pisa and Brindisi, and subsequently, of course, also now in Dubai. Walid is from IHC also. Simon was a speaker at the last Jihad event. Mario, until recently a member of the Dubai, of the Jihad International Scientific Advisory Board, and an old friend also. Nadia from UNHCR Dubai, who we also know each other from there. And Paul and His Excellency Ambassador Al-Jaman have met earlier today only. But I look forward to interacting with you much more in the time to come. I've seen IHC grow and develop these last 20 years and have been continuously impressed. In fact, I've worked with all the CEOs of IHC, which we saw on the screen there, Walid Harib in the very beginning, and subsequently Ms. Makia, and then of course Ms. Shaima, all of whom were on the board of Jihad as well over the years. IHC's achievements over the years, culminating in the remarkable operations of these last few years in a large variety of operational theaters, are indeed deserving of much praise. The IHC's patron and founder, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai, has of course set the tone and laid out standards of excellence from the very beginning. The UAE, it is to be recalled, and I think the ambassador mentioned it, is the world's largest per capita aid provider. And the IHC has been one of the outlets of the UAE's generosity in this context. Many partners have joined IHC over the years, international organizations, NGOs, and commercial companies, who have joined hands in the pursuit of improved emergency preparedness and response. This in the knowledge that the facilities provided, together with the IHC's location in Dubai, provide for the best possible staging point for very many regions. Now let me ask the panel members to briefly maybe introduce themselves, after which we will start with our discussion, and I will allow myself to ask them a few questions. So maybe, Ambassador, we have already and been introduced to you, but maybe I can continue then with Nadia to say a few words about who you are, and after that we will proceed with a few questions on my part and answers on yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nadia Jbour. I am very touched to be here today, actually, meeting old friends, partners, colleagues, and many good faces. My name reminds everybody being the former head of office of the UN Refugee Agency. I was there up till last year when I moved to Geneva. And at the moment, I'm working with the UNHCR, but in a very ambitious portfolio transformation and change. So totally a different field of work, but the UAE remains a very strong component of my life and dear to me. So I'm really, really happy to be here today with all of you.
Ms. Henan, do you suggest the panelists sit over here after they've introduced themselves? That's maybe a good idea. And if you join me here, then I don't feel so lonely, first of all, and then let's then continue with Mario. For those of you who don't know him.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm not going to repeat what Nadia said, but I think the same would apply to me. I just recently relocated to Geneva after 10 years in the UAE, and those 10 years really intertwined with the IHC that I saw. Well, I basically now realize I saw half of it, basically 10 years out of 20. My last role, I had different roles and I had different connections with the Humanitarian City, but I was the executive director for Doctors Without Borders regional office out of Dubai, out of the Humanitarian City, where we also had consistent and developing logistical connections that I'll discuss later. I'm today a senior advisor at Doctors Without Borders headquarters here in Geneva. And again, delighted to be back with friends and really to reflect on the community that we've built over the years.
Thank you very much, Mario. Maybe we can now have Paul Molinaro.
Yeah, hello. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Paul Molinaro. I'm working for WHO in the Health Emergency Program as the head of Operations Support and Logistics. My engagement with UAE goes back even prior to IHC. In my previous life in UNICEF Kabul, 2002 to 2004. So it really was kind of there at the genesis and beginning. So it'd be, I hope, a fascinating discussion on the last 20 years, but also hopefully the next 20 years. So, pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Paul. Why don't you join us also? Next on the list would be Simon.
Thank you very much. Privileged to be here as well. My journey with the IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross Red Crescent, started, I'm actually a bit scared even to think about it, back in 1987. As a young, full of goodwill and illusions delegate, as we call it, I went to Sudan very sad to see what's going on now in Sudan. And I had no idea it would become almost a lifelong journey. So I was very privileged to do many, many very different jobs, which included also being regional director for Asia Pacific, regional director for Europe, regional director for Africa, currently in charge of what we call a very long name, Global Humanitarian Services and Supply Chain Management. I think logistics will do quite nicely. Anyway, privileged to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Simon. Why don't you join us as well? Then we have Walid Ibrahim.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Walid, and I'm currently the HNPW Network Coordinator, or as some of you probably know, the job that Giuseppe, that man over there, held for many years. And I was lucky to be part of this team when the whole journey of the expansion of the HNPW network began back in 2000, actually, with Dubai in 2006 being our first hub that we opened as a replica of the Brindisi hub that had been there for quite some years after we took it over from Mocha. So I mean, after many stints in WFP, my life was always somehow attached to HNPW, and I'm very happy to be back in this position specifically, because it's probably one of the positions that I've always wanted to hold within WFP. So I feel very lucky. And so I mean, again, back in the days with Giuseppe, the interactions with Dubai was before the merge had happened. So we were part of that previous situations where you had two humanitarian cities in a way living neck to neck until the Sheikh ended up merging them. So lives through that. And Chadi, I guess it's one of the heavyweights within the IC, us representing many members ourselves. So as the other panel members, very glad to be here and to reflect specifically about the next 20 years and what the IC can bring to the table when it comes to the larger humanitarian community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walid. Why don't you join us here as well? And then last but not least, Giuseppe.
Thank you, Gerard. Morning, everybody. I'm the current CEO of Dubai International Humanitarian City. I had the honor of being appointed in 2017 by Zionist, and I'm still there. I was supposed to do just a short period, but it's appeared that short periods are in reality long period. I started my, let's say, UN life together with Gerard. That is what is accompanying me since, let me say, 1996. And after 4 years, I moved into WFP. I had the opportunity of setting up the HNPW network. While that period was my, let me say, my friend in the long journey, together with other part of the team in Brindisi, and together we built up something that really is doing a very great job. Walid, congratulations for replacing Marta and taking over. I'm pretty sure that will continue to grow. 20 years that I'm also attending the art. So I was there since the first edition, and I'm happy, of course, to get today Gerard and facilitating this panel for multiple reasons. So thank you so much, first of all, to all the colleagues for having accepted my invitation. And thanks to the ambassador for the words in opening this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Why don't you join us as well? And then we have a full panel. And I will start asking individual panel members each a question, and after that we will have an opportunity to have an exchange, a discussion between the panel and of course the audience. Let me start then with a question to Nadia, which would be as follows. Having witnessed the growth and development of the Dubai International Humanitarian City over the years, especially in the wake of the pandemic, can you speak to some of the key milestones or achievements that stand out to you, and how has the IHC's role evolved in supporting UNHCR's operations?
Thank you, Gerard. I just want once again really to press on the fact that it's great to be home, far from home. It was really a very touching moment today, meeting a lot of faces and connecting with IHC, because for me it's a strong pillar showing how strong we are in having built relationships, personal, professional relationships that we can all collectively work together to enhance our humanitarian delivery. UNHCR has been part of IHC and has been a member since 2006, and somehow we have witnessed the growth of IHC throughout those years. As I mentioned earlier, I was recently in the UAE working as the former head of UNHCR office there. And during that period, it was quite evident that the relationship was very important to strengthen our humanitarian intervention globally. Luckily, when I landed, I had the mercy of 3 months only before COVID, and then COVID hit. I remember my shipment arriving to my house. When I unpacked, there was the confinement. Everything was closed. Land space, the connectivity, things have moved from meetings face-to-face to virtual meetings. I remember Ambassador, I met, you were I think the only one I met personally in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then we were hit by confinement, so everything moved to virtual, and lots of us had a lot of challenges personally and professionally to navigate. Giuseppe, I knew a lot. IHC, I knew a lot, and we needed to enhance our relationship to make sure that we work and deliver as we can deliver. And IHC was there during that period. It was with the support of IHC that we shipped numerous shipments, whether by air or by sea, to respond to different displacement crises around the world. In 2022 alone, the global stockpile in Dubai responded to the floods. We saw Jihad speaking about the floods in Pakistan in the short video. And we also responded to the Ukraine situation. 67 airlifts helped around 133,000 refugees and internally displaced people. And because of IHC's support, we could manage to basically deliver those airlifts speedily, rapidly, and in a very concrete coordination. And on top of it, IHC has been hosting UNHCR in the premises, whether it's our offices based in Dubai and the warehouse. And that's a very generous contribution from the leadership of IHC, and also I would say the strategic partnership we have also with Giuseppe and his valuable team. We're basically very proud to be a strategic partner. And why I say that, because throughout the years we have developed, 20 years might seem very short, but there's a lot happening during the 20 years that we have gone through. The journey of displacement continues, and it's quite evident that IHC played a role in mobilizing all the efforts, whether it's direct to UNHCR or our agencies who work under the umbrella. And I wanted also to touch upon the IHC data bank and other initiatives that have been put together. It's not just, the typical supply chain. Simone, you mentioned supply, logistics. in a nutshell, which is a PhD in itself. But with the data bank and other initiatives, it created a platform for all of us to work, to collaborate together, to meet new partners, to shadow, to enhance collaboration and connect the dots together, because the humanitarian interventions are very much needed in this world of today. So, and in particular with UNHCR having 100 million people who are in need of our mandate and protection in today's world. We are very much in need of this collaboration to continue.
Thank you very much, Nadia, I think, for enlightening us on that score and seeing how the IHC has assisted UNHCR in undertaking these operations, which unfortunately are getting ever larger, and on account of also the increasingly large number of people that are refugees. Let me move on to Mario, and in case you have any questions in the context of what Nadia has just told you, keep these maybe for once we've gone through the individual questions of the panel members, but don't forget them, write them down. Mario, you were involved in the work of MSF in the UAE 10 years ago and have seen the Dubai International Humanitarian City grow since its inception. How was the IHC's presence and support impacted MSF's operations in the how has the IHC's presence and support impacted MSF's operations in the region, and how has it helped to improve the overall delivery of humanitarian aid and assistance?
Thank you. I'm first of all maybe to focus on some administrative realities, but I am surrounded by esteemed colleagues from agencies with very strong framework agreements with the government of the UAE and many other governments, of course. But I would say maybe I might be the voice of the NGO that doesn't have such agreements, and that very early on positioned itself in the UAE. Doctors Without Borders opened their office back in 1992, so way before the Humanitarian City, in the UAE, recognizing the hub that it was back then, and recognizing the potential basically to interact with the civil societies of the region and to make use of all the advantages and benefits to advance our operations. And the reason why I mentioned that is that for a very long time in the whole region, there was very few places, and in the Gulf, the IHC was maybe the only place where we could register and operate as an NGO while maintaining our independence, which wasn't an easy task, again, administratively, of course, but in other parts of that region. And as we know, a region that has been unfortunately muddled by conflict, not many places that would also provide the stability. So the Humanitarian City, Doctors Without Borders was a late comer to the Humanitarian City. We moved there in 2016. I had been interacting with the Humanitarian City before, so I was quite familiar with the setting. But first of all, we had a base. We had a regulator. We had an enabler. We had the possibility to do what we were set on doing in that part of the world. That I would say would be the first aspect. Again, my colleagues will speak much better than me about the logistical capacity and the options and the possibilities, but we were also very kindly offered free storage space and the possibility to really make use of all the services that the logistical part of the IHC was offering to its members, and something we've been using, we're still using to date, and that really contributes to our logistical strength in the region and beyond. Because again, I think, I will not speak instead of logisticians, but it's not just about physical proximity, it's also about what are the possibilities that exist as a global logistical hub that is Dubai today, and the possibility of being through the IHC able to tap into that. Last but not least, I was mentioning our presence in terms of interaction with civil societies in the region, which was, again, one of our priorities. We focused on links with the media in the region, on communication before social media, and then we added social media to the list. We also worked on fundraising. We developed recruitment and training and capacity building options for our workforce. And we benefited from the pull factor that Dubai gave us in the region. And I think it's a secret for no one that many of the most brightest talents we would see in the region would end up gravitating at some points in and around Dubai. And that was something very helpful for us to be able to tap into those resources and really contribute to diversify our workforce, really contribute to build it up and increase it and make use of the facilities we had there. And again, that would not have been possible without having a strong presence and the support of the IHC. And this is where I saw the evolution of the services that were offered. And I think we grew together. I believe I saw 3 CEOs during my time there, each one of them bringing a different brick to the construction, basically. And but most importantly, listening to what were our needs, what were our requirements, what were the problems and the challenges that we were facing. And I think that it did end up being a community. Didn't matter what mandates we had, what was our different modus operandi. We did collaborate. It was a place where we gathered with many agencies. It was a place where we shared a lot of information, where we supported each other, where we had a lot of services here and there. I can speak about so many examples. Maybe if we go back to the pandemic and being able to tap into WHO's stock and help each other because our shipment was on the way, but we didn't have it back then. And again, this is something that, can only happen if you have a tightly knit community. And I would, pay tribute to the IHC for that, because we had that space to be working together, to be helping each other, to be supporting each other. So I really think that that's what it is, and it's a community. It's a hub. It's also a place out of which we have been able to input on humanitarian dialogue. I think we don't necessarily talk about that enough. This has been important for our organization. This has been important to be able to input in this part of the world where we believe that our, voice was needed to be heard in Arabic, needed to be heard in different languages, needed to be heard with audiences from the region. And the region, I'm talking really geographically. It's not just about speaking in Arabic, of course. And again, this is a place out of which we were able to operate and really, participate to the development of our operations. I'll finish with that. I've talked a lot about supporting our operations. We were running part of our operations from Dubai. We continue to this day to run those operations from Dubai, and I think that the proximity it gives us to those contexts of intervention in that region, that proximity, that's a physical one, that's a cultural one, one where we share a lot. We are able to get together quite easily. And we are able to improve the quality of the services that we offer to our patients and the communities we try to serve. Again, I could clearly see over the years how that community once more enabled us to do so. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. I think you're yourself an example of what you said in terms of the best in all fields, ending up in Dubai. And I'm fairly sure we'll see you there again. Or even more seriously, the aspect you mentioned of mutual support. I think that's an important aspect of IHC and of Dubai. The Dubai set generally. I think that's something that I have also experienced there since I've started working there. And which makes also for very good and tight relationships. And I think this was exemplified today by a number of us seeing each other again. So thank you for that. Let me move on to Paul. Paul, as the Director of Strategic Health Operations at WHO, can you speak to the added value that the Dubai International Humanitarian City brings to WHO's operations and emergency response efforts? What about WHO's strategic decision to move its global logistics center to Dubai and within the IHC?
Okay, thanks very much. Just going a little bit into the history. WHO was present within the UNHRD compound within IHC till about 2015, where the regional office created a small space within the platform to support specifically Yemen. Since then has grown from strength to strength, unfortunately, in response to the various demands being put through the insecurity generally within that particular region. Of course, with COVID, a lot changed. Dubai became really an essential piece in a wider jigsaw. I think the colleague from UNHCR had alluded to border closures with the regular scheduled airline network switching itself off in response to border closures. And what we had put in place was really a set of kind of lily pads that you can jump from one to another like a frog, kind of like. The only analogy I can think in a sea of border closures and airline shutdown, and certainly Dubai became an important one of these, where we were able to bring things in, to reconsolidate or repackage and then move things along to the next hub. So it has kind of grown in there, particularly with the capability we have in handling some of the medicines and IHC. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank IHC, the government of UAE, the Office of the Prime Minister, with the support that's been given, both financially and on accessing certain capabilities during COVID in the terms of air assets and other things. We now have a place, we have various different temperature control, down to the -70s needed for the mRNA kind of vaccine. And so the infrastructure is there. And so certainly when you're looking at the hardware piece of what IHC brings, in terms of the handling and the physicality, the location, the temperature control, the access to aviation, the access to other partners and swap and share, it's all of a benefit. And we certainly see that being positioned globally in the health architecture for future pandemic response and for large health emergencies. I think the other interesting piece potentially that can be explored more is more on the software, and certainly see the evolution within WHO of establishing hubs where it gives us a chance to concentrate resources and expertise around thematic areas. And this is certainly being borne out. So in Berlin now with the hub for epidemiological intelligence, in Lyon with the Academy for developing curriculum for various different categories of health workers and disease specialists. The mRNA hub, technology vaccine transfer hub in Cape Town, the biohub where storage of pathogens and sharing of genetic and pathogenic material between countries here in Switzerland. And so we certainly see the space for a similar approach in being able to concentrate expertise around logistics, around material and product specialty handling, quality assurance, temperature control, solar energy, etc., as a expertise knowledge hub in its own right. And of course, I am a logistician, and it's great to have the software and the know-how and the knowledge, but it needs to come with something hard as well. And I think that that mix of being able to develop that kind of knowledge hub around a physical infrastructure in a networked approach with other pieces of the puzzle. Some of these hubs can be potentially, I'm talking about logistics hubs that we used during the pandemic now no longer are used for that role. Certainly agreements between hubs and between countries to be able to turn on some of these platforms on and off as required. But with UAE and Dubai being particularly where it is, I mean, certainly we see that as a permanent fixture with that constellation. So really looking forward to see where the next 20 years goes. And certainly as far as WHO is concerned, we're really looking at trying to develop that enhanced or augmented shared capacities between different organizations and states and civil society.
Thank you very much, for Paul, also for highlighting the role of IHC within the context of networks, global networks, and also for elaborating on the role IHC has played in the context of WHO operations over the years. Of course, the COVID period has definitely left a footprint. I know a number of your colleagues, Mike Ryan and Rick Brennan, including one of our board members, Nadia Hadje from Cairo, who are all extremely full of praise for the role IHC has played over the years in the context of as I say, WHO originated aid operations. Thank you for that. As I said earlier, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, please remember these as for once all panelists have spoken. Let me move on to Simon. Simon, let me ask you, as the Director of Logistics for IFRC, can you discuss how the Dubai International Humanitarian City has helped to enhance IFRC's logistics capabilities and support emergency response operations? As someone who is not seated in Dubai, do you feel the impact or unique advantages Dubai offers as a hub for humanitarian logistics?
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We are a membership organization, so we have 192 country members, Red Cross or Red Crescent. So in a sense, every country has an office already. So was the case in United Arab Emirates with the United Arab Emirates Red Crescent Authority, which was there from the beginning, actually, if you like, since the country was created. But we recognized the value of the geographical location and the synergy which UAE is providing, and opened a logistics hub back in 2000. It was not as early as the MSF, but 2000, year 2000. And when International Humanitarian City was created, we very quickly recognized the value of being in Dubai, and we moved to Dubai since 2004, as Eiler has mentioned on that movie, on the video. What happens? Well, first of all, it is a common space, I would say. It's a great facility to exchange physically, to borrow from each other. I have to say big tribute to the vision, foresight, and wisdom of the authorities of the country, and Dubai in particular, in financing and investing big way to provide this home to the big international players. It makes a huge difference, and like all my colleagues have mentioned already, we borrowed from each other, we invested into each other's sort of capabilities, we were able, because of this fantastic infrastructure and the transportation arrangements, we were able to move efficiently and fast, and we continue to do so as we speak, together with others, to the most acute emergencies which strike our planet. Of course, from one spot on the planet, you cannot serve the whole planet. And frankly, my wish and dream would be to have similar synergies elsewhere on the planet. We have, of course, hubs like UNHRD, but it is this vision of working together. We are different organizations. We complement each other. Sometimes we compete with each other. We compete for funding, for space, for access. But the best competition is in terms of sharing ideas in the first place. And I would echo what you mentioned, Paul, the soft component. It's not just the warehouse. It's not just borrowing from UNHCR tents, which we urgently needed in Turkey. It is not working with the WHO and, creating supply pipelines on PPEs and medicaments to the hotspots. It is about ideas. I think the tribute to the authorities and to the IHC leadership is that that friendly, very conducive space was created, which allows for this exchange. We set up early on our inter alia fleet base in Dubai. That's where we do conversion of the vehicles. We have a stock, and it serves us very, very well. So it was very nice to see that UN agencies picked up our idea, which we introduced years ago, on leasing scheme. And we were very glad to see that, something useful is being spread around in the community. We are equally very keen to keep picking up ideas from the agencies, this very, very friendly way. And let's compete with ideas and share them as appropriate. I think, the events during today and tomorrow, this week, will be also an opportunity to do that. Now, the next step probably is about digitalization, because we know very well support to those who are hit by calamity is, of course, it needs to be material, but flying goods and shipping goods to emergencies is a very expensive exercise. So we all want to do it locally. We all want to move more to cash. And in the end of the day, it is this optimal combination. And in each situation, it will be a different formula. Optimal combination of cash, vouchers, and in-kind goods purchased locally, and when necessary, flown in or shipped other way. Is this combination which is the winning formula. And as much as we can share this local knowledge in a hub like Dubai, this is really the main, I would say, value other than just simply material. But it's also very, very material. And again, thank you to the generosity of people of Dubai, of the government, of the government and authority of the UAE. This very material contribution to all of us, allowing us to save on the infrastructure, on the transportation, on the offices costs, because this money is also indirect contribution to the most vulnerable, where they're most well used. So great place. My personal theory, having traveled the world very, very extensively, is that there are few portals on the planet. And it's very difficult even to describe what is a portal. For me, it's sort of, combination of energy, access, something almost cosmic. Without becoming too romantic, I would say Dubai is definitely one of those because of all these connections. And I think, the future, 20 years is a good time to celebrate. But looking into the future, that's where we should focus on ideas, innovation. And it's not for nothing that we're planning to have together with our, under patronage of our member UAE Red Crescent Authority, a major Red Cross Red Crescent conference on supply chain management and logistics in January, to which we'll have wide range of invitations to our sister agencies to discuss not just supply management and the state of play in the world, but innovation, which is such a big deal, I think, in Dubai. So thank you very much for providing us with this fantastic home, to the government, to the country, and to the IHC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you for pointing out some of the things maybe we either take for granted or that are obvious, but the geographic location of Dubai is, of course, quite exceptional in regard to all the regions that we know surround it. Also, the ability and willingness of the UAE and Dubai in particular to invest and contribute to aid generally and to develop unique institutions such as the IHC, and this at a time where resources globally compared to needs are not keeping pace, as we know. Last but not least, let me move to Giuseppe. Sorry, Walid, no offense. Walid, as the WFP, of course, the triumvirate, right? WFP and WHO and UNHCR, and also at the origin, if you like, of the humanitarian hubs. As the WFP UNHRD network coordinator, can you speak to the complementarity between the Dubai International Humanitarian City and UNHRD in terms of enhancing the overall efficiency and effectiveness of emergency response efforts? And how do you see this partnership evolving in the future?
Thank you, Gerard. It's definitely something that Giuseppe and I have discussed, have lived from when Giuseppe had this position in the past, and it's something that we're discussing frequently. I think the complementarity between two networks, because if you look at it, UNHRD is a network within a network. IHC is a network, UNHRD is a network in itself. And in the years, the IHC has obviously gone through phases, many of which have been eloquently described by the other panel members. But today, the IHC is this unique hybrid model where you're not only dealing with the donor, but also with the service provider, because they have the capacity to do so. In other parts of the world, certainly where UNHRD is present, you don't necessarily have a government counterpart that is able to fill many roles in one. IHC, because of its history and because of the way that it was set up and conceptualized, has this ability. The complementarity comes as a given in many ways because of who we are, but it's not to be seen as an area where sort of competition or overlapping can't be avoided. The fact that we have sometimes overlapping needs or overlapping situations is winded down by the fact that we speak to one another. So these can be avoided at the start. And to be quite honest, as we see the world around us, I mean, there's a lot to do for everyone. It's not, I mean, the needs out there immensely overweigh the ability for us to respond. So in essence, you need more players that can be brought to the table and not less. What we agencies or organizations that represent our other agencies, a multitude of agencies, I mean, we all here do that. I mean, IFRC has, how many civil societies that they represent, WHO within the cluster, health cluster, they represent many actors, so is UNHCR. I think we are at a moment where those big organizations that represent other organizations, call it networks, call them platforms, call them, whatever other terms, we have that responsibility towards the humanitarian community to speak to one another and to ensure that, those overlaps do not happen, but also we have the responsibility of trusting one another more, i.e. trusting that certain elements of the wider humanitarian response will be championed or led by one of these networks without necessarily us all going into the same area. We have to take that approach of really, trusting one of our organizations in specific areas and support that organization rather than duplicating the same efforts. And I think the IHC also, leading on to what Paul was mentioning earlier, vis-a-vis the next 20 years, they have this unique opportunity to create some sort of a benchmark vis-a-vis the other countries that host, prepositioning and response efforts, in the way how this can be taken on by a country and what type of structures and synergies they can create within their own governments. Other panel members spoke about it. The beauty of Dubai is not just in its geographical location, which is clear to everyone in terms of logistics capacity and geographic strategicness. It's in the way the different elements of the government operate with one another. Paul was mentioning us being logisticians. For us, it's, for many of us, it's important how the linkages between the customs and the port and the airport operate and able to allow you to respond faster without any hiccups. The IHC has all that because it represents those elements or has the connection with those elements within the government. And those other countries that host other preparedness outlets would benefit from understanding how is that possible in Dubai, and perhaps even morph some of their organizations into such entities that can play that one-stop shop for the humanitarian community.
Thank you, Walid. Thank you also for pointing out the essential nature of linkages and trust acquired undoubtedly through experience and lengthy close collaboration. Undoubtedly assisted also on account of the previous experience with UNHRD of the current CEO of IHC, who this time is the next speaker. Giuseppe, as the CEO of the Dubai International Humanitarian City, can you discuss how the IHC is responding to emerging challenges in the field of humanitarian aid and logistics, and what innovative approaches is the IHC taking to address these challenges and better support the humanitarian community? Over to you.
Thank you, Gerard. Well, I believe that my first challenge within IHC was when I opened the law governing Dubai International Humanitarian City. And I went straight to the objectives of the law. In reality, there are 4 objectives, but one in particular, I was asking myself, how can I afford? How can I cope with this objective? The objective is clearly saying that IHC should support the humanitarian community in order to respond to emergencies worldwide. They said, okay, we know perfectly the generosity of UAE. Ambassador Al-German mentioned values. Gerard mentioned values on the generosity of UAE, but I was asking myself how I can achieve this kind of goal. Well, and I believe that you already provided the answer, working together. So my objective was, how can I encourage the humanitarian community, the private sector, foundations, philanthropists, and so on, to become part of IHC and to be, let's say, supporting the humanitarian community in order to honor the objectives of the law. And this is where substantially we started. It was not only and exclusively the period of the pandemic when I noted that private sector, many others were knocking the door of our offices, asking how to support the humanitarian community of IHC. Ourselves, together with the community, we started in identifying tools. Nadia was mentioning the Humanitarian Logistics Data Bank, which is a very innovative tool, but is based on customs transactions, means that we have a strong support also from other agencies of the government in order to track the movement of the humanitarian aid. And the same we started doing in other countries, in the sense that, again, not working together only and exclusively as humanitarian community, but trying to involve, for example, the other countries that are hosting humanitarian hubs, such as the one present in UAE. So we started in doing this mapping, starting from Australia, passing through China, once was one of the main hubs used during the COVID-19 pandemic, then Dubai, then extremely familiar for UNHCR, the Jordan, Kenya, and Cameroon. Then you have the other HRDs in Brindisi, Accra, and Panama, and so on, where we have simultaneously presence also of IFRC. So means that we have a humanitarian community which has a common presence worldwide, but now we have to bring on board also the other governments. And this is one of the objectives of the COP28, to get there and to get around the same table in UAE, in Dubai, during the COP28, at the margin of COP28, a meeting with all of those governments, all of those humanitarian organizations that are working with. So substantially, there is only a solution for the challenges that we have, and that is exactly working together. This is something that we started in doing as UNHRD more than 20 years ago. And there is no doubt, alone we cannot do nothing. And this is something that you, all colleagues, confirmed. So I believe that we should continue on this journey together. I believe that we should involve more and more, again, the private sector. You were mentioning flights and so on. We just facilitate, because today Emirates Airline is part of our main partners. Whenever there is a need, they are ready to. The same, we can talk about Etihad. We used to knock the door of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed and getting even some private jets for moving humanitarian aid. So, and whenever there is no other options, we have also some funds, and we are going to use those funds. So it means that we are trying to involve as much as possible the other. Just a final point. Yes, IHC is representing a donor. Trust me, I started my international life with the Italian cooperation, so with the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I used to be a donor. But what I can tell you today is not that IHC is not representing a passive donor. Forget that we are going to just provide signing checks and saying, okay, do your nice job. No, we want to be part of the humanitarian action. We want to work together with the humanitarian community, but simultaneously, we intend to involve more and more, for example, the national disaster management offices. We had good examples of cooperation in Southeast Asia with the AHA Center, with the Humanitarian Office of ASEAN, together with UNHRD. And following those examples of cooperation, I believe that we can do much more vis-a-vis the national communities. So this afternoon, together with other colleagues, we are going to have a specific session on this, much more detailed, but again, how digitalization, for going back to the humanitarian logistics data bank, or the application of artificial intelligence to that tool, thanks to the private sector, young entrepreneurs that are giving us this kind of support. So how we can approach, let's say, the challenges of the humanitarian community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. The fact that IHC has promoted and continues to promote this collaboration also between the humanitarian community and the private sector is one of its most interesting facets, I think. You mentioned also the COP28 as did the ambassador earlier on, and in that light also the future. And that brings me maybe to a final question, but which I will ask of the entire panel. And maybe feel free to jump in as soon as you're comfortable to do so. The International Humanitarian City has helped to foster greater collaboration and partnerships among humanitarian actors, and as I mentioned, also with the private sector. And what are some examples of successful partnerships and collaborations that have been facilitated by the IHC? How can such partnerships and collaborations be further strengthened to better support the need of crisis-affected populations? And how do you think this will develop in the, let's say, the next 20 years? Because it's something that's growing, obviously. And where there is a will in the UAE, as we know, there is a way. So please expand in terms of your own thoughts and visions in terms of the future. In any order that you want to start? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I just was thinking about what Paul was mentioning, WHO's role, and I really hope that the next 20 years we don't have another pandemic. But with this note, I come back to the COVID pandemic period where I think personally and professionally, we were all challenged to think outside the box, how we can use innovation, how we can use so many tools, brains, collaboration to make things happen. And I personally have witnessed a time where earlier I mentioned that, you know, everything was shut down. We could not even communicate with our families. We could not do anything personally. School became home, home became school, virtual communication. And that's something that we were not used to. And I do remember the time when IHC and Giuseppe, in particular, when we reached out and we said, we need support because among the vulnerables, there are always vulnerables and more vulnerables. And we have displaced situations with the COVID pandemic happening. There were floods happening at the same time. There were wars happening, and everything was melange. Everything was so much in a confused manner that they were integrated, and the most vulnerable were affected. And during that period, when everything was really paralyzed, with IHC support, we could, the number continued to come to me because it was a miracle for me to see that the supply chain, the China, everything was literally shut down. And we know it, we felt it. I'm not talking, you know, the theory. I'm talking from each one's corner. We managed to ship 11 airlifts to destinations where you could not reach. And that's thanks to the leadership of IHC, the commitment, Giuseppe persistence to make things happen during a period where even the costs were high. The airlifts, Etihad Airlines, how many times they supported with their own crew to ship a lot of things during core relief items during time which was almost impossible, to be honest. And it's because of the relationship, because of the being able to communicate with each other, we were able to support those initiatives. Even the leadership himself, he had committed special airlifts during those periods of time. So it does come back to me, and it does affect me personally, because I know that when we all come together, we can do miracles. Now, in the next 20 years, I hope there's no other pandemic, but climate crisis is affecting us. And I'm really happy that the UAE is very much committed with COP28. I followed it when I was there, and I follow the news. I'm on Instagram, I follow IHC, but also I follow the leadership, see where things are developing. COP28 is an opportunity for us, because by 2050, if we don't address climate crisis, we will have around an estimated 200 million people displaced because of events that relate to climate. And I really hope COP28 would allow us, even as a refugee agency, to shed more light on the effect of climate with displacement. Come to work collectively together to address some of the challenges that are ahead of us, and just to remind ourselves that we cannot do things alone. We as an agency have an ambitious path on, most of you know about it, the Global Refugee Forum, where we continue to say it's a whole society approach. You cannot solve issues alone. We all have to group together. And what I welcomed from Giuseppe's intervention is the leadership of the UAE. The UAE as a country, a promising country, has not only contributed financially. I personally have witnessed walk the talk. When we talk about climate effects, there were certain steps that were being taken in the UAE in terms of the recycling, and these are huge steps in terms of commitments to the globe, in terms of the wider commitment, the CO2 emissions, and. So I do believe that with the leadership, we can mobilize the humanitarian efforts collectively together to work together. If one thing I can say, we are all in competition for finance. I really hope that we're all in a competition to solve the climate crisis. That's my only wish.
Thank you, Nadia. Very good vision in terms of where we go from here. Anybody else? Simon.
Thank you very briefly. One is purely physical material, so to say, interoperability, I think that's the word. We started discussing it, but we should look deeper into mechanisms of sharing goods, sharing relief supplies, maybe sharing softwares. At the moment, it is difficult. There are issues of markings, and we had instances when one agency was able, to give to the other agency, let's say, tents and blankets, but they were all marked with that agency logo, and then it didn't work out. So, this kind of things, interoperability, I think that would be a very useful thing. Our specialists will certainly look for and find solutions. The other one is really back to the software or the ideas, knowledge. I personally believe that sharing knowledge is actually a very spontaneous thing. I mean, if you have a conducive environment, if you have camaraderie between the actually competing with each other agencies, that happens almost like, in a natural way. And I think that's, again, the great value of setup which we have in Dubai. But there is something we could do perhaps in a more structured way. I did mention the conference, which we're planning in January next year. Maybe under the auspices of it links to DHAT, I think, very, very nicely. But under the auspices of the international humanitarian city, we could do something more structured on that front. The innovation, forward-looking, how is aid looking? You know, analysis of the world, analysis of the crises which are with us today and which will be coming tomorrow. They will be coming, no doubt about that. There is, of course, other types of mechanisms. There is country coordination mechanisms. There is IAC mechanism where agencies exchange on different levels. But given that we are all under the same roof, I think we should move over and above and beyond just purely technical interoperability cooperation. So the word analysis is very important, I think, here. And we could do a lot more by structurally sharing it, not only spontaneously over a cup of tea as we do with the friends all the time, but in a more structured way. We, as far as IFRC is concerned, that's our vision of Dubai. We would like to transform our presence and hub in Dubai in close cooperation with the UAE Red Crescent and, of course, under the auspices of the IHC, into more and more into knowledge, relationship, innovation hub. I think connectivity with the commercial sector, with the private sector, and there's a lot of, you know, very, very good energy over there. We would like to do much more. So cooperating with the other agencies under this umbrella of IHC on that front, and with the support of the government of the UAE, would be, well, seems to me, you know, a journey for the next 20 or more years. Thank you.
During which we'll still benefit from your able leadership, right, Joseph? Anybody else? Paul? Please.
Yeah, just make a comment first on this aspect of competition. I don't really see it necessarily as competition. I like to look at it more as unplanned redundancy. And I think it's a concept that will be catching on in the private sector, and is certainly catching on right now with various military organizations around the world. I think the shift from just-in-time efficiency to just-in-case hedging of risk is something that is going to potentially change how supply chains are perceived globally. So I wouldn't look upon ourselves too badly in terms of competition. I've always found it as a redundancy. If we don't get something through to X, Y, and Z, but the Red Cross does, I mean, that's great. Then I can shift my stuff somewhere else. So I think that's the direction going. And just on a concrete example around IHC, I think there's also this aspect of evolution sometimes being accidental as well as planned. That's how evolution works, I guess. So we have sort of 3 global providers, long-term arrangement for the provision of certain medical emergency kits. So the trauma kits, the non-communicable disease kits, and they have without being necessarily asked to set up their component consolidation and kit packing plants in the UAE as a direct response of being closer to where the customer is going to be. And this has allowed us to work very closely with them in terms of being able to get regular updates and information from them on what their production and manufacturing plan is over the next sort of 6 to 8 months. We have that in hand. We can see the demand coming in from various different countries, and we can match, and we get a sense of where we're going to be short, where the shortages are coming. So right now it's in trauma supplies. It's not by surprise with what's going on in Ukraine and earthquakes. So I think that just that center of gravity and them coming in for their benefit, but it also then sort of benefits us in our being in our ability to plan ahead, which is where we're going to get more efficiency. So I would see there's going to be, just by dint of bringing brains, you hope locking a bunch of brains in a same location leads to something more than the sum of its parts. Yeah. If I take, for example, on the HRD network, we've changed our engagement with the HRD. So right now in Brindisi, we're not really using it as a stock anymore. We have a project now where we're bringing the medical expertise of MSF, of Valima, of some of the ministries of health, of some of the emergency medical teams together to look at design of modular prefabricated lightweight treatment facilities for respiratory pathogen work. That's looking at it completely different from a shed with a bunch of pallet spaces and pallets. You're looking at this as a potential place to develop, to design, to test, and then to train and drill on how to run it, how to put it all together. So I think that it's changing, it's constantly evolving, and I think that does underpin, if we can have this kind of approach of bringing different people and different capabilities and different skills, diverse background, diverse ways of thinking, that something is going to spark, and it has to. I think with the climate change, we do hope, touch wood, that this was the pandemic only coming once every 100 years, continues to only do that once every 100 years. I don't necessarily really want to repeat it, but I think that's the benefit, both as networks within networks and within networks. I mean, right now we have the Federation, which is a network of member agencies working in the HRD network within the IHC network, and we're coming in as a network of member states, also taking advantage of that network. So this network of networks certainly is a beehive of energy, and let's see where it goes. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Paul. Anyone else? Are you?
Well, I'll just be short because my colleagues have said a lot of the things that were in my mind, and I think it speaks also to maybe our community of practice. I mean, you're talking about partnership and you're talking about the future. I think all our agencies and organizations represented here can speak to climate change and the consequence on our work, basically, on the communities we support, we help, we save, we serve. And I've always thought of the IHC more as a community, a special community of practice. I mean, we're all sit here with different mandates, with different operating principles, focus on operating, of course, different models of funding, of running our respective shows and all that. I see people in the audience also who may well have been with us on the panel here, but there's so many chairs we can put, I'm guessing, around the table. But we're a very special, we were, when we were there together, a very special community of practice. And I think it was really, for me, the picking and choosing, the possibility to expose to each other how we are conceiving our work, and what I can take from Nadia, what Nadia can take from me, what you've given us, Giuseppe, what we brought to the table, and again, for looking at what's coming, I think it's undoubtful that consequences of climate change is going to be keeping us busy, and I hope that the IHC, the same way we grew and evolved together, will provide that same type of platform and community of practice for us to share the innovation, the lessons learned, the consequences, help each other when we have issues. I would go in Paul's direction. I never really saw competition, maybe because of our own specificities, but I mostly saw, people calling, asking for my opinion, me calling, asking for other people's opinion. Giuseppe, you letting us know that so-and-so would present this type of innovation or those type of project or those type of activities. And we all took what we wanted to take, what we could take, what makes sense to us, etc. So I think this is probably the constant that I wish to see over the next 20 years and beyond, to really keep that special spirit and that special community of practice for each one of us to take what's coming out of it. I mean, I'll finish when I look by just reflecting very quickly on objectives of planetary health that my organization has set, and looking into the health consequences, looking into the displacement consequences that you were referring to, Nadia, and so much maybe not necessarily different work, but so much specific work to come to happen, so much practices to share and discuss. And I do sincerely hope, and I think we have in that part of the world a platform for that, and that's the IHC. So I hope we'll continue to see that for the years to come.
Thanks, Mario. Walid?
I don't think the IHC, we have to worry about IHC and what they're going to do in the next 20 years. I think they've got it clear already in the very sense that they understand perfectly well that the danger of being a network and not letting it become an island is what is the only thing that could set them back. But they're not there. They completely understood how their responsibility has to be seen within a greater element of responsibilities, and where possible fill certain gaps that are not there. But I can see all of that in the IHC, so I don't think we should be too worried about what they're going to morph into and the changes that are going to go through in the next 20 years. They've just have the right attitude towards problem statements that we as a community we're going to have. And I think the very essence of understanding of not becoming an island, because sometimes this is what we can be at risk of, not that those networks become islands and stop speaking and stop talking to one another. This is the major risk. If you start doing so, as we all know, I mean, the best ideas come from that interactions of that you have with people. I think the elements are all in there for those interactions to continue to happen. So I'm not worried.
Any other comments on future?
No, I would like to thank all of my colleagues and friends here, because I have something to bring home in terms of suggestion, recommendation, comments, and so on. That's it. Also, because here we are close to. I live with you, Sharad.
Okay, I don't want to summarize what my colleagues on the panel have just said, but two or three things stuck with me. One was complementarity rather than competition. I think we agreed on that. Greater use of untapped resources, and there are still untapped resources, and maybe also bringing in new actors, and there are new actors. Paul mentioned very briefly the military, and it's a touchy subject, but in this very building right now, there's also sessions going on in terms of the civil military coordination. And it's interesting, of course, especially so in the context of natural disasters. But those of us who were around in Pakistan earthquake or tsunamis remember well the role that the military could play. And as you know, the military are getting larger and larger these days. So maybe, again, this MCDA concept is something that should be further pursued. And then, of course, the never-ending or the accelerating innovations, which we should capture, and therefore, I mean, not necessarily think that we're home, even though I agree with you, we don't have to worry, but we should keep an open mind in terms of the new innovations and capture those and use those. So, but for that, again, sometimes there's resources required, and those we have to continue to mobilize. Now, I still want to leave a few minutes for questions, if that's okay. If anybody has a burning one that you've been saving, this is the moment. We have just a few more minutes. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Ambassador. I would like to thank you for convening this meeting also, and thanks for all the panelists for highlighting the role of Dubai Humanitarian City. It is a great opportunity to highlight this. I mentioned in my statement that UAE will host COP28. We are expecting 70,000 participants in this conference, from governments, stakeholders, NGOs, private sectors, international organizations, and regional organizations. And I think it is a great opportunity for all to be on board to participate in this conference and to highlight the role of IHC also, how to mitigate the climate change and as you said, Your Excellency, how we solve the climate crisis. This is an opportunity also to all of international organizations to be part on that in that conference. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Unless I don't see any swinging arms, then one swinging arm. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Reza Mohammadi. I am UNCTAD coordinator in Central Asia and Afghanistan. First of all, I would like to congratulate to IEC colleagues and the government of UAE for this great initiative. We are one of the newcomers in the joint IEC. I just would like to point out that all colleagues are the humanitarian part. Maybe you question what UNCTAD does there, you know. All the colleagues have humanitarian items, warehouse, everything. And when the goods goes to those countries of the need, they may stock in the customs. This is when our rule is started. And thanks to the Joseph Jihad and other colleagues there, we started to train the customs officers and customs DGs using the IEC facilities. You know, we just familiarize them to when the humanitarian items comes, how they deal with that. You know, because we already in 100 countries for the customs and for the training them, for developing the SCUDA system there. So the element we're gonna add with the support of the IEC, that's humanitarians good, how they deal with that. So it's already in the right track, and it's gonna be one of the elements of the visionary of next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other swinging arms? One more in the back.
I don't know if I'll put it as a question or the food for thought. My info from the Global Logistics Cluster. And I was asking myself that question. I was looking at all of you, some of whom I've been working with for the past 20 years, including Giuseppe Saba. I'm also one of the pupils of UNHRD. How do we've been talking about trust, attitude, collaboration, the how we get to that collaboration together. And we all know that it's also very much related to the personality of the people. So my question of food for thought, because it's not for answer now, is how do we institutionalize that? How do we get the next generation to think like that? How do we get the next generation to continue the work and the path that has been taken so far? Maybe I put a big question there, no?
I think, as you said, it's food for thought. An additional note we make to ourselves as we end this session. And if there's no more either comments or questions, then I would ask you to consider the ambassador's final statement as a closing of this very good meeting. And in honor of the IHC, and in my own name also congratulate the IHC on a very happy birthday. Thank you. Tell me, what is this? You who are.
Ça, c'est la copie de la report.
I thought it was a pizza.